My name is Betty Miller. I'm 63 years old. Now what it was desert. I possibly special. I'm a widow. Hi. And for decades my life was summed up in one word. Dedication. Now. Dedication to my son. How? Andrew. Andrew? I raised him alone. Now, with my hands full of calluses and my heart full of love. But tell me something. How can someone you raised with so much affection let someone else erase you from their own history? This question does not leave the minds of many women who, like me, gave everything for their family, and one day woke up treated as a nuisance inside their own home. You start out as the foundation of everything, and ends up as the nuisance that needs to get out of the way. I understand what you're feeling, the pain of being forgotten, the anger swallowed in silence, the lump in your throat that only tightens when who should protect you starts to humiliate you. I've felt it all, and it was when they called me invisible that I decided to leave a response. Not with shouting, nor with scandals, just 2 words. Good luck. In this video, when outcome, no down a seat handstand, do you want to go there? I'm going to tell you what happened before and after that moment. Because when a mother is silent, that's where the most powerful response begins. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. Not all war is made of shouts. Sometimes the most accurate answer is a well-placed silence. Mine came after seeing a photo on social media. My son, his wife, and rich mother-in-law, smiling on the couch in my house. The caption read, Tom, the family that really matters. At that moment, something inside me broke. But it was also there that my strength was born. I only commented 2 words. Good luck. An hour later, my son was at my door, screaming, desperate. The house. Mom, no. What have you done? If you've come this far, it's because you may have felt something similar, being pushed aside by the one you gave everything to. So, it's started doing. I ask you, with an open heart, if this story touches any of your wounds, follow me, leave your like, subscribe, mine because telling this is not easy. It's like opening a scar, but if there's someone on the other side understanding the pain, I can move on, because none of us should go through this alone. And now, let me tell you how it all started. I have always been a woman of habits. I like the smell of fresh coffee in the morning. I like to listen to the birds in the yard and feel the earth in my hands when I take care of my azaleas. My house, here in Selwood Moorland, is simple, but it was all built with sweat and dignity. Every tile, every piece of furniture, every detail has a little piece of me. I like the tranquility of the neighborhood, the old trees that shade the sidewalks, the sound of church bells on Sundays. There's a comfort in knowing what to expect from the day, even if it always comes empty of visitors. Oh, my son, wasn't it sad? Andrew, when you look out, how will it have? has lived in Seattle since he got that job at the tech company. It was an achievement. Of course, I remember how hard he tried, how much he studied at night. Oh, well, after his shifts as a clerk in a market. It was a pride to see him grow. I got by with accounting freelancers at that time. I did neighbors' taxes, closing cafeteria, cashiers, whatever came up. Sometimes I would stay up all night, reviewing spreadsheets, and still wake up early to prepare his coffee. I never complained. It was my role as a mother, young, and I did it with pleasure. But over time, he walked away, not abruptly, nothing blatant, alone. Cooling, calls decreased. Birthdays began to be remembered by short messages. When he came to visit me, he brought me expensive gifts, perfume, headphones, but he barely looked into my eyes. I pretended that everything was fine. He served dinner, told the same old stories, laughed at jokes that he didn't even want to finish, because, deep down, he was still my boy. Most days, loneliness doesn't weigh you down. I get busy. I go to the library on the corner, take my cookbooks to donate, pick up old novels just to remember how good it was to dream. I go home, have lunch alone, watch those old court shows. I have my neighbors, of course, Marjorie, who always calls me to walk, and Edith, who keeps offering me chamomile tea. But there are times when the silence screams so loudly that it seems to fill the whole house. Once, on a spring Sunday, I prepared a roast like in the old days. Table, set, fabric napkin, my best glass platter. I sent a message to Andrew. He said I missed him. He replied, "Hi, today it won't work. Mom, we're going to Diana's house. Is that it? Not a next time." I washed the dishes in silence, put everything in place. Then I sat on the chair on the porch and stared at the empty street. And I thought, did I do too much or too little? It's hard to explain this feeling of being slowly forgotten, to become part of the scenery, now calm, as if we had won an entire war, and now it was just a medal thrown in the drawer. And that's when I need to ask you, have you ever felt this way? Have you ever had the feeling that you gave everything, and, even so, ended up empty-handed? If you've been through something similar, comment below with a word that comes from the heart. It can be "I've lived it," "It touched me," "It's true," or just "I believe," because when we write, we find ourselves, and I know I'm not the only one to feel this whole. The most painful thing is that, even noticing the distance, I never stopped waiting. Wait for a call, an invitation, any memory. Sometimes it was enough to hear my name. But the days went by, and nothing. It was as if, after so much effort, my presence had become, optional. Well, but everything started to change the day Andrew introduced me to Diana, and what seemed like just a new chapter in his life, it would soon become my greatest trial. Because in that meeting, I didn't know, but I was about to be erased from the book of my own history. The day Andrew brought Diana to meet me is still fresh in my memory, as if it had happened yesterday. He called saying that he would come to visit me on the weekend, and that he wanted to introduce me to someone special. I prepared the lasagna that he liked the most, put on the lace towel that he only used on important dates, and even fixed his hair with a curler, something I hadn't done for years. I wanted to be beautiful, in a good mood. I wanted her to look at me and see there a mother who took care of her, who fought, who gave everything for her son to get where he got. But when the door opened, I felt it. It was as if the air had changed temperature. Diana entered with a tight dress, thin shoes, too sweet perfume, and a smile that did not touch her eyes. His gaze passed through my office as someone who evaluates a property before buying, analyzing, comparing, judging. She complimented my rug, saying it's so vintage it must have come back into fashion. Commented that it's so charming when a lady keeps everything as it used to be, and said she loved the smell of an old house because it reminds me of childhood. Each sentence was said politely, but it hurt like a pin hidden in the middle of flowers. I could tell the quick glances she gave Andrew when I spoke, as if to say with his eyes, "See?" And he laughed, sometimes embarrassed, sometimes distracted, but laugh. I pretended not to notice. I set the table, served dinner. I tried to strike up a conversation. I asked about her family. That's when she told her that her mother, Susan Caldwell, owned a chain of beauty salons in Lake Oswego, and that she helped her invest in projects aimed at high-end women. He used that same term, high standard. No, I just shook my head. I kept thinking that my high standard was always rice, beans, and a child sleeping fed. During dinner, Diana looked at the paintings on the wall with an expression that tried to disguise discomfort. And when he complimented my food, he said with a smile, "You must be great at that comfort food. The one that fills the soul, even without being fit." I didn't say anything. I just smiled. She didn't want to be the bitter, nosy mother-in-law, the woman of the past. But already there, on that first night, I knew that girl hadn't come to add up. She had come to occupy space, and me, so was true. I was learning, little by little, that my place in my son's life was no longer guaranteed. The visit ended with an icy hug, one of those that touch the shoulder, but do not touch the heart. And when they left, I stood there in the doorway, watching the car drive away, feeling a tightness in my chest that I couldn't explain. Only later did I understand that that pain was the beginning of the erasure. But that night, looking at my empty room, I could only think of one thing. What else would that woman be able to take from me, without even having to raise your voice? After that first dinner, Diana began to frequent my house with a frequency that I did not expect, nor had I been consulted. In the beginning, she was always accompanied by Andrew. They arrived for Sunday lunch or for quick coffee during the week. And I, wow, as a good hostess, kept the table set, the apple cake warm, the smile firm on my face. But as the days go by, she started coming alone. He said that he was passing through the neighborhood, or that he had run out of internet and needed to advance something fast on my Wi-Fi. I didn't deny it. No. It said that the house was open, but inside, she felt the air getting heavier with each visit. Diana did not scream. She did not directly offend. She was fine, polite, and for that very reason, dangerous. The kind of person who hides razors under his calm tone of voice. Once he came into my kitchen, looked at the cabinets, and said, "Oh, those handles are so classics. Did you know that aged brass is back in trend? Of course, everything is so authentic." Smiled. Yeah. And I understood. It was a delicate way of saying that everything there was outdated. On another occasion, "Why didn't Siljanstraptrot understand?" said what? He went through the picture frames on the bookshelf and said, "Wow, so many photos of little Andrew. How? You were very close, right?" He still has this kind of emotional thing. But in helping him become more independent, I remember that my hand even trembled when I went to get the cup of tea. But I restrained myself. "Why, no, I replied calmly. "Whoa, being emotional has never been a defect. It's what separates a man of stone from a man of truth." She just smiled, as if listening to an outdated lady talking nonsense. Gradually, it occupied spaces. He changed the dish towels in my kitchen, claiming that mine were looking tired. She left her magazines scattered in the living room, always with covers showing modern houses. Too white, too cold. Once, I noticed that even my lavender incense was gone in its place, a ring that she brought to improve the smell of the environment. That afternoon, I went into my own room and found Diana sitting in my reading armchair. He was on the phone with someone and said, "Ray," in a low tone. No, how? Not yet, but it's only a matter of time. Listo. He will understand that he needs to cut the cord at once. When she saw me, when Leonard, what did Portel? She pretended to be talking about work. I didn't confront it. I just turned around and went to wash dishes that were already clean, just so I wouldn't explode. No, I know what she meant. What? I felt it. Yeah. The cord was me. I was the nuisance, the old root that prevented that modern man from flourishing. The worst thing is that Andrew didn't seem to notice. When we were together, he was more and more oblivious, absent. He avoided eye contact when Diana made these comments. I didn't defend myself. She said I was exaggerating, that she only had a direct way. One night, during a dinner, she blurted out, Betty, have you ever thought about doing a little makeover here? Sometimes a makeover gives a new lease of life. You know, if you want, I can recommend a decorator. I smiled. New on the outside, but inside, my soul shrunk. That was my home. My home. My refuge. and she was reconfiguring me. No, as if I were an old piece of furniture. The final blow came on a Sunday. When we were all at the table, I told a story of Andrew, of when he was 6 years old and got sick. Mr. Alcocho, and I spent 3 nights awake measuring fever. Diana, no, with a suppressed laugh, commented, "Oh, and then he saying, these childhood stories are so symbiotic. Sometimes it's good to break these ties to grow. Right, no. Love, love." And he agreed. He shook his head and said, "Oh, yes, we need to evolve." I just kept eating. The rice felt like sand in the mouth, because then I understood. They were getting rid of me. Oh, politely. How? With velvet gloves. And I, no, like every mother who loves too much, kept swallowing everything. But how far can a woman swallow her own erasure without suffocating? That's what you'll see in the next part, because what happened next, I never forgot it. When Andrew told me he was getting married, it was over the phone, and I was sitting in my corner of the porch, sewing an old pillowcase. He spoke excitedly, said that he and Diana had decided to make everything official, and that the ceremony would be intimate, modern, now, uncomplicated. Seor, Sigana Munstern. I was happy for him. And a grandchild. Of course, a mother always wants to see her child forming a family, but I soon realized that the word intimate had a different meaning there. Nobody asked me anything. They didn't ask me for help choosing a suit, the place, the invitations. The weeks went by, and before I knew it, the bride's mother, Susan Caldwell, was already organizing everything, from the buffet to the color of the flowers. I felt like a last-minute guest. I was not called to taste the cake, nor to help with the preparations. When I tried to ask something, I heard from Diana. Susan has already taken care of everything. Betty, but thank you. Okay? You deserve to rest. The lady, how pretty. Not mother of the groom, nor my dear mother-in-law. Alone, me wanted said her. The lady, on the big day, I arrived early for the ceremony, an all-white, modern space in Lake Oswego, dressed in the best I had, with a nocarne, on sur one tom, a light blue outfit that I wore to my cousin's son's christening. When I arrived, no one showed me where to sit. Nobody called me for the making of. I stayed in a corner, helping the waiters fill jugs with water because it was the only way I could find to look useful. When Andrew passed me, minutes before the entrance, he hugged me quickly and said, Mom, just don't cry, okay? I swallowed hard. The bride walked in stunningly, and Susan, her mother, June, was the one who led her daughter's arm down the aisle. I kept looking and thinking. It was supposed to be me there, next to my son. It was supposed to be us. During the ceremony, they mentioned Diana's father who had passed away. They spoke of him with emotion. with space. I, a- alive, standing, the town style, was not mentioned even once. I, no one said thank you to the groom's mother. No one recognized my years of effort, my role in building that man who was there, saying yes. At the time of the photos, I was called for one or two, those of protocol. Then they gently pushed me away. I was holding a bag and a coat of guests, and when I noticed, Susan was sitting in my chair next to the bride and groom, as if that place had always been hers. At the party, I sat alone for a while. The DJ played songs I didn't know. The decor was beautiful, but cold. Then someone offered me a piece of cake. I ate slowly, so I wouldn't cry. Soon, because there, at that party that was supposed to be a family party, I was just another shadow among the furniture. And Thursday, town. At night, when I got home, I took off my earrings calmly. Old Salvador. I looked at myself in the mirror. The makeup was still intact, but my eyes, they had already faded. And that's when I realized they had erased my name from history. Everything was rewritten with a new pen. But will those who write beautifully? Do you also know how to live with truth? I'm here, opening my heart, telling my story. If you're listening out, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel because I still have a lot of things saved to tell you. Because the hardest part was yet to come. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to be asked out of your own life? As if it were a favor? That's that. Wait for me and I'll tell you. A few months after the wedding, Andrew came to visit me alone. It was a cloudy afternoon, one of those where the sky seems to carry what we feel inside. He sat in front of me with a serious but affectionate expression. He said he had an idea to better organize the family's assets, that Diana was helping with more modern financial planning, which would be good for me, for him, and even for an eventual inheritance. He used words like security, efficiency, now, we said, symbolic transfer. I listened to everything in silence, trying to understand where it was going. He said that if I put the properties in the house in his name, everything would be easier legally in the future. It's just a formality. Mom, you're still here. Nothing changes. And I, silly, believed it. Because we want to believe in our own child. Even when something in the chest screams, don't do that. Even when a part of us feels that it is signing its own absence. The next day, he brought a lawyer, a friend of Diana's family, who was recommended by Susan. The man seemed to have everything ready. He spoke with a speed that made me dizzy. I asked to read it calmly. He smiled and said, sure, but it's just technical adjustments. Andrew held my hand. Trust me. And I signed it. I signed as someone who hands over the key to the soul, thinking that she will continue to be the owner of her own name. In the first few days, Nothing seemed to change. But then, little by little, this stuff high on tech days, what journey through, things began to disappear. First was the picture frame with my husband's photo in the living room. Then my mother's embroidered tablecloth. When I asked, Diana said she was redecorating with a cleaner aesthetic. She changed the carpets, changed the cutlery, and that year got for down, hiding a sound, or put air fresheners in all the rooms, and one day, called a locksmith. When I saw it, she was changing the lock on her front door for safety. Noun, Lashukai. Betty, we do know the man's young. We can't risk this crime, right? The tone was sweet, but the poison came at the tip of the sentence. One morning, I went to get my old coffee maker and came across an imported electric machine with a digital display. My spices had been changed. My reading corner became a multi-purpose space, and the armchair where I crocheted, it was gone. I asked for her. Diana replied, I donated. While I was already so worn out. Honey, and that hurt me more than I can explain, because it was as if, little by little, she was erasing my traces, my marks, my history. One day, I tried to get into the little room where I kept my family albums. The door was locked. You're not a newest. Diana said, how? Listen, come. Oh, I rearranged some things there, but then I'll show you. Okay? That night, I sat on the edge of the bed and realized that it was no longer my home. I slept in a borrowed room, surrounded by furniture I didn't recognize, with smells that didn't belong to me. It was as if everything around me was saying, this place is no longer yours. But the worst thing was not the loss of things. It was the loss of myself within that space. And then I asked myself, what happens to a woman when they take away from her even the right to exist within her own home? It was there that I knew something inside me needed to awaken, and it was going to be in silence. But it was going to be strong, much more than they imagined. Over time, the masks fell off like dry leaves in autumn. After I signed those papers, the house that was mine started to have new rules, rules that I didn't write. Diana began to speak with a different tone, a little firmer, nice, calm, as if giving orders and expecting obedience. Once, I entered the room to watch my afternoon program, and she, without looking up from her cell phone, said, Alson, Betty, one dim now, I'll genius. Now we're using the room as a meditation space between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. Okay? You can watch it in your room. It was my home, my television, but I went upstairs and turned on the radio quietly, just so I wouldn't think too much. The next day, I went to the bathroom in the hallway suite, as I always did in the morning. Diana knocked on the door and said, "When you see Karen chat, Anton," laughing. "I see, Billy, thus. Oh, how. Just warning you. We are trying to keep separate schedules to avoid conflicts. You can use the one upstairs in the morning. Okay." Okay. She always asked, how are you? Ah, as if the phrase erased the poison. And I, as always, swallowed. I began to feel like a guest within my own life. What? I learned the new schedules, the new silences, the new invisible boundaries that pushed me to less. Susan, I knew her mother, ah, also started to appear more. And when she came, she would sit right in my old chair on the porch, cross her legs as if she were the mistress of the house, and say things like, "It's admirable how well you've adapted to it. Betty, few of your age can give up space like that. Teddy, wow, na chance, ni sidro, na high." As if everything was a favor I owed, as if living would take up too much space. At one of the dinners, I remember that Diana spoke looking into Andrew's eyes, but with the phrase directed at me. I was looking at some interesting retirement community options. There's one in Tigard that looks super welcoming, full of people of the same age group. They say it even improves mood. I stopped, the forkful in the air. I looked at her, Mom, then at my son. He lowered his head. Wow. Neither expected an answer. It was just another step towards my replacement. Just another way to push me out the door without directly touching the subject, as if saying that a lady needs a suitable environment was more elegant than assuming. "We don't want you here anymore." And it was on that day, sitting at the table, chewing a tasteless salad and listening to my sentence in a tone of kindness, that something inside me took hold. I thought, now they think they're sweeping me under the rug. Oh, but they forgot that I was the one who built the floor. I looked around and realized no one there remembered who I was. They knew what they had in their hands, but they didn't know where it had come from. And then I want to tell you something from the bottom of my chest. Stay with me until the end of this story, because who sees a silent lady, he has no idea of the strength she carries. That same night, while I was collecting the dishes and listening to laughter in the background, I had a thought that never left me alone. Would I have to disappear first to get what is mine? Or was there still a way to turn the tide without losing who I am? That morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sun was still stretching through the curtains, and the house was silent. That muffled silence that seems to hide something wrong. I went down slowly, barefoot, just to feel the ground. I was about to reach for my kettle in the closet when I heard voices in the room, whispered but clear. It was Diana on the phone, sitting on the couch, speaking quietly, as if hiding something even inside what she has already taken possession of. "Yes, Mom, I've already spoken to the architect. Her room will become a closet and an office. She will have to understand, even more so if the pregnancy goes well. An elderly space can't be on the ground floor, right? Imagine an accident." The other voice, niece, Susan's, escaped through speakerphone. If she resists, well, arrange a situation. I know some people in Tigard who can convince any old lady with skill. I stood there, hidden behind the wall. my heart pounding, a mixture of fear, anger, and shame. It wasn't just about the bedroom. It was about erasing me from the map with beautiful justification. They were going to use a possible pregnancy as an excuse to shoo me away, turn my story into a carpentry project. There was I. Everything became clear. It was not an impression. It was not an exaggeration. It was a plan, and I was the obstacle. I went back up to my room and sat on the edge of the bed, hugging my embroidered pillow. My hands trembled, but it was no longer sadness. It was a decision. I took my old black diary, the one where I wrote down everything from appointments to forgotten birthdays, and on the back of the cover, I wrote down a name that still gave me confidence. Elias Garner, Pastigingto Utad Tornetan, as thou old Arise, my lawyer from years ago, the only one who always treated me with dignity. I called him that same day. We scheduled a discreet coffee the following week, in a bistro far from the center. I told him everything. He listened in silence, without haste. When I finished, he just said, "Let's take it easy. Betty, meh, no scandal, ID," but firmly. From then on, hey, I started recording conversations, forced laughter, no dinner, unwinding tale, phrases disguised as care. He wrote down each thing in his notebook. I took pictures of the house moves, the labels with my name scratched on the boxes, the indirect messages pasted on the fridge. Elijah guided me through everything. It was like putting together a puzzle. Every crumb they left behind was a piece of the plan. One day, Anne, accidentally fiddling with the printed emails left on the living room printer, I found an exchange between Diana and a broker. They were evaluating my properties for future sale. And the worst, there was another conversation with a family lawyer. Diana wrote me, "When the time is right, we will arrange the divorce. He will leave with half, and the rest stays with me. The reinvestment more with share us. It's just a matter of time." Andrew was just a bridge, a pawn, a means, and I, the basis of everything, was the obstacle, the weight. No, the old woman far. It was there that I felt it, not only for me, but for him as well. My son was being used, manipulated, taken from me on the inside way. And even though I wanted to scream, I knew the answer would have to come my way. Silent, wise, and with evidence. It's amazing how we get older hearing that time takes everything. But sometimes time also gives back. That day, looking at that paper in my hand, I thought, nay, wow, how many mothers have gone through this? Silent, invisible, removed with cruel politeness. If you, on the other side, have ever felt this feeling of being discarded as if it were an old piece of furniture, comment here for me. And you can write, "I know how it is," or just I understand you, because shared pain hurts less. And when we speak, other women recognize each other. But listen, this story still has a twist, because you know what a mother does when she has lost everything but her dignity. She gets up, and when she gets up, no count. No one holds back, and I was about to take my first step. But before that, something even more revealing happened. Do you have any idea what I found in Susan's personal folder when she left the house by mistake and forgot her purse on the kitchen table? I discovered more than I expected. Much more. There came a time when even the silence of the house began to seem too loud. It was as if every wall whispered that I was no longer welcome. The laughter that came from the kitchen, the whispered conversations at the foot of the stairs, the corner looks, everything screamed that my time there had passed. Diana no longer bothered to pretend. One day, while washing the dishes for lunch, I let a glass slip out of my hand. It hit the sink and broke. She came quickly now, her eyes hard, her voice even harsher. Why, Hassan? Really, Betty? That was part of the new set. You need to be more careful. Or will you want to keep sabotaging everything around here until we give up for good? I was speechless. If I spoke, I would cry. If she cried, she would win. Andrew, Adenuka, who was sitting at the table, just got up and went to the bedroom. He didn't even look at me. He was no longer the boy who hugged me with his eyes. He was a quiet, absent man, as someone who walks inside a dream that is not his. In the following weeks, more things started to disappear from my room. First was my embroidery basket, then one sewing and the patchwork quilt that my mother had made when I was born. I asked Diana, and she replied, I think we donated. Well, the room will need a new face soon. I didn't ask myself what for. I already knew. I was the reformer, or rather, the rubble to be removed before the renovation. At Christmas, I made a point of preparing a supper, even though I knew it would be ignored. Niewant Sirhan Pine Haub. I roast a small turkey. Muan. I made farofa, apple sauce. I took everything to my room and ate there, alone, while listening to their laughter in the living room. There was music, bowls toasting, voices celebrating, and none of them were mine. At some point, they even sang Silent Night, and I was there, in the dark of my room, listening to every word as if it were a farewell. It was the first time in 63 years that I had gone Christmas without a hug. Not a gesture, no, not a single ticket. The next morning, I woke up and realized that my seat was gone, the same one where I sat down to read. So Lindama, remember, way loud, tested you, the Bonasorkanoistinger, I'm a party. I went to the trash in the garage, and there it was covered in scraps of wrapping paper and fruit peels, thrown away as if it had no meaning at all. I felt a sting in the soul, one of those that has no remedy. I sat on the step of the stairs and stood there, staring into the void. No. That's when I heard Diana laughing with Susan in the kitchen. They talked about how the new year would be finally free of emotional interference. Interference. I, Betty Miller, Maud Tom, mother, widow, woman of struggle, I, now reduced to a sentimental discomfort. I thought about leaving. For the first time, I thought hard, Neil, to pack my few things and disappear. Let them keep what they wanted. Wah, the house, the furniture, the artificial peace. But then a small, now, how did you descend? Another apart, firm voice inside me whispered, well, not yet. Wait, wait. And I waited, because something told me that time, time was still on my side, and that the next turn would not be theirs, but mine. Well, can you imagine what made me get up from that step the next morning, with dry eyes and a straight spine? It wasn't anger. It was something much stronger. I was about to act, and when I acted, everything began to change. That morning after Christmas was marked in my soul as a turning point. There was no screaming. There was no scandal. There was only one silent lady walking up the stairs with slow steps, but with her head held high for the first time in months. While they slept downstairs, exhausted from their own party, I sat down at my old desk, the only thing left of mine in that room, and grabbed the hardcover notebook where I'd been jotting down everything. Dates, phrases, details. It was time to make every line count. I called Elias, and we arranged a discreet meeting. I want to reverse everything. I told him my sits too much on the top, looking steady, but without fanfare. No, I want to leave here with dignity, and they, with the fright. He just smiled. I knew it wasn't the first time I had turned it around. It was just the first time I had done this without moving from my place. We started to review the contracts. He explained to me that, even though he had signed the transfer of assets, there were loopholes, especially because I was not properly oriented, and the other party's lawyer had ties to the family involved. That changes a lot. Betty, we left there with a plan. Why, over the next few weeks, I went back to Gregory Hensley, Mom, the accountant who had helped me back when I bought the second property. More so, he was amazed to see me, and even more so to learn of the situation. You trusted too much, Betty. Oh, but it's not too late to adjust things. We began pulling old records, receipts, emails, purchase notes in my name, proof that I was the one who paid for every penny of that small empire. Every sheet that came out of the printer was like a brick coming back into my hands. I was reconstructing, paper by paper, what took over me, with smiles and expensive perfume. It was during a silent afternoon, while labeling documents on the bed, that I felt something inside me rekindling. It wasn't anger. It was a kind of lucidity. I looked at myself and saw more than a forgotten lady. I saw a woman who overcame grief, raised a child alone, wow, paid every bill, braved cold nights with thin blankets, and yet offered love, always love. And now, this woman was back, without shouting, without fighting, just with a plan. I began to use firmer words when I spoke. If Diana said, "Could you?" "Norms," I replied, "No, thank you." If Susan offered me help with my room, I would say, "It won't be necessary." I learned to occupy my silences with presence, and even if they didn't realize it right away, the mood changed, as if they knew, deep down, that something was being set up. Once, Diana saw me leaving with a thick envelope in my purse and asked, "Did you go out to solve something, Betty?" I smiled with my eyes. "Just organizing the future, dear. Ah, as you like to say." She forced a smile, but her eyes, those eyes lost their security. And it is in these small cracks that the truth begins to leak. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. There are stories that we carry for decades until we find someone willing to listen. And if you've come this far, it's because my silence has found yours. But now comes the part that no one expects. Have you ever seen what happens when a betrayed woman in silence decides to put everything in place? Document by document, memory by memory. Because I was ready, and the first step, it was going to leave undergroundless. There were weeks of strategic silence while Diana paraded around the house as if she owned the world. I sewed every detail of my comeback in silence. I started waking up earlier, pretending to walk, but I was actually going to the city's digital library. Elias had taught me how to use the online public archives to pull in old records. There was the evidence I needed, the original deeds of the house, the rental properties, all acquired with my name, my income, my receipts. I started to put everything away in a red zippered folder, a symbol of what was mine and would be again, while she laughed on the phone with Susan, planning parties and trips. I recorded audios telling the day, reporting everything that happened, from the poisoned phrases to the whispered orders in a tone of affection. Elias said that these recordings would have an enormous weight. "You're a coherent woman, Betty. No, see, your voice will be worth more than any mistakenly signed paper." Wow. At first I trembled when I spoke, but over time, the reports turned into outbursts. And when we speak the truth with a clean heart, even the voice gains more strength. I began to scan notes, capture screenshots of Diana's messages, some mocking, some downright hostile. "Don't forget bath time, please. We don't want accidents." Or, "If you can avoid cooking today, Susan will bring something more. Want chow? Adequate." I started smiling when I read it, because the contempt she thought elegant was, in fact, my ammunition. One afternoon, while she was out with Andrew for some dinner, I took the opportunity to open her file cabinet, which was locked with one of those fragile combination locks. It only took 3 attempts and he opened it. There were papers from the health plan, shopping lists, renovation notes with the name of my room on them, all indicating the intention to replace me, little by little, disguised as modernization. I took pictures of everything. I sent it to Elias, and he replied, "No, Katie said Kraubonishek. It's all falling into place. Soon we will have enough to act forcefully." Even Susan had let slip, in an audio recorded unintentionally, that Andrew's marriage was a bridge to the stability of the Caldwell family. I listened to that about 3 times, sitting on the porch, eyes down, with the headset in my ear and my heart steady. It didn't hurt anymore. It was as if each recorded sentence was a brick taken from the back. And little by little, the weight turned into structure. One day, while hanging clothes on the line, I picked up my favorite blue blouse, the one Andrew gave me for my 50th birthday. As the wind shook the fabric, I found myself smiling alone, because there, in the backyard of the house, where I was forgotten, I knew that something was coming back to the place. And the best part? Nobody noticed. No. Diana thought she had won. Andrew, poor thing, didn't even look me in the eye anymore. But I looked at myself, and I saw someone who survived a much worse thing. I lost my husband to cancer. I raised a child alone. I faced days when I didn't even have milk for coffee. What now? Now, I was just reorganizing what had always been mine. Sometimes we feign fragility just so that no one realizes how close we are to the truth. And I was so close, but so close. There is a phrase that accompanies me to this day. Silence can seem like weakness, but it is often the sound of justice getting ready. And if you've made it this far, stay with me, because I haven't yet told you how a single word, written at the right time, can make it all fall apart. Can you imagine what was the first concrete step to take everything back without anyone noticing? Well, that's exactly what I did. And when they found out, it was too late. I woke up to the sound of Diana's cell phone vibrating nonstop over the kitchen counter. She had left in a hurry, forgetting the device connected to the speakerphone. I was about to leave discreetly, as I always did to avoid any misunderstanding, when the screen lit up by itself with a video call. The voice that came out of the loudspeaker was not Susan's, nor Drew's. It was a man with a Texas accent, lively, calm. "So is everything ready for change?" "Diana, the financing staff has already approved it. You said the house was in your name." "Right," she responded, laughing. "Now, without imagining that she had left her cell phone on. "Of course, everything is under control. The old woman doesn't even understand what is happening anymore. And Andrew knew well, he'll end up accepting. It always does. When the spa is running in Austin, no one will even remember that phase." My body got cold. She continued, "Savannah and I have already chosen the building. It will be a boutique spa, with aesthetic clinic, yoga, holistic treatments. I want to get away from here. You know, recommends, recommends. Portland is too small for me. Man, out so am I. The man on the other side praised her, called her a visionary, sir, and she replied, well, no. And she replied, the only thing missing now is to clear the emotional ground. After that, the rest is profit. Clear the emotional ground. Well, those words echoed in my head for the rest of the day. Newell, I, who had already felt a nuisance, an obstacle, a shadow. Now it was described as dirt, something to be cleaned up. I was Andrew, a dead weight in her plans, an inert body that she would push out over time, using divorce as a tool. The truth was wide open. She didn't just want the house. She wanted the value of the house. Legal certainty. I borderline sublime. Look out that. The emotional structure that still supported all this. My son. And getting rid of it was also part of it. I went back to my room without making a sound. What would you do? I sat down, took a deep breath, squeezed the pillow in my lap. There, Limandamarine. At that moment, I knew that it was not just for me. It was by Andrew as well. My boy, happy now, und second. He could be blind, welcome, manipulated, distant, nay, endowed to much to do it now. But he was still my son, and maybe, just maybe, there was still a way to protect it, even if he didn't see it, even if he didn't thank him. Because a mother protects even when her son forgets who she is. I went to the drawer where I kept my tape recorder and pressed rec. I repeated everything I heard, described names, and, wow, schedules, when are now behistel, na captain, my dear bad. Even the address of the spa she mentioned. I sent the audio to Elias, along with a message. How? She will use the house as collateral. It already has the name of the partner and everything. He replied almost immediately. That changes everything. Let's act before she moves any papers. That's when everything inside me fell into place. The urgency pushed me to a place I hadn't visited in years. Courage. Not the noisy courage of youth, but the courage of the woman who has lost everything, and, therefore, is no longer afraid. Sometimes we think it's going to break, but it's just the beginning of the turnaround. There are certain memories that come back with such great force that even the breathing changes. I remembered the day I got my first paycheck as an accountant. From the smell of paper, from the feeling of being able to pay for Andrew's milk with clean money, conquered with the mind. I also remembered the time my husband told me, already sick, how that I was the strongest woman he knew. Memories like this are not erased. They come back when we need them most. You there on the other side. Have you felt that too? A memory that springs out of nowhere and gives you the push you were missing. If you've been through something like this, let me know in the comments. It may be something small, but it has marked you. Sometimes that's all we need, to remember that there is still ground under our feet. That night, I lay down, looking at the ceiling, but with a steady gaze. I knew the moment was coming, and when the truth came out, no one would be able to call me invisible anymore. And you. Can you imagine who was the first person in the family who realized what I was about to do? It was someone you can't even imagine. Wow. And this reaction, everything changed. It was a clear Friday, one of those in which Portland seems to smile shyly, as if knowing that the cold will soon return. I was sitting on the porch, with my warm cup of tea, and the noise of the city in the distance. I took out my cell phone, as usual, and went to open the weather app. But my finger slipped and opened Facebook, something I almost didn't use, but kept to see old photos of Andrew and follow the lives of old coworkers. And that's where I saw it. Right at the top of the feed, a shiny post full of forced smiles and warm colors. It was a photo on the sofa in my living room. My sofa. I'm Diana in the center. Oh, Capticio. Susan on one side. Lady. Oh, Del Cransivio. Andrew on the other. My terrace. On the table in front, a cake decorated with golden flowers. And the caption, Leo Tiboi. On the caption, short and cutting. Wow. The family that really matters. I took a deep breath, very deep, because the pain came dry. No surprise. It was as if it only confirmed what my heart had known for a long time. I had been erased, Mom, from the house, history, from the memory of my own son. There was nothing of mine in that photo, and at the same time, everything there was mine. The wall in the background, the antique kitchen clock, wow. The glass vase I bought myself at the flea market. Netterborn, wow. Even the cushions that decorated the sofa had been embroidered by me. Years ago, when Andrew still slept with his foot against my chest. My first impulse was to cry, but I didn't cry. My second impulse was to scream, but I didn't scream. I just put the glasses on my face, breathed again. Wow. And I wrote 2 words. Just that. Good luck. I wrote with the calm of someone who has already seen the end of the road. And I pressed publish. That was not just a sentence. It was a warning, a farewell, a key turning. And it was like throwing a stone into a lake. The comments started popping up. Leo, Ireland, old colleagues, neighbors, even church people. Some with an emoji of astonishment, others with complicit silence. And me? I closed the phone. I went to the bedroom. Now, new words. And I called Elias. It's time. Oh, he answered firmly. Why? Are you sure? Betty? And I said, in a voice cleaner than ever, I do. It starts now. That publication, for me, was more than public humiliation. Oh, it was the last push, as if to say, with all the letters, you're no longer part of it. And I, with 2 words, made it clear. So, get ready. The process was already ready. The tests were organized in chronological order. with dates, times, transcripts, recordings. There were messages, audios, witnesses, Diana's every step accurately documented. Elias had articulated everything with surgical elegance. He didn't just want to contest the documents signed under duress. He wanted to show the pattern of abuse, the hidden intention, the plan built on emotional fragility. And that day, when I pressed send on the last email with all the files attached, I felt that something inside me was free. It was as if the chains that bound me to that house began to unravel. I didn't have to scream anymore. I didn't need to explain anymore. I just needed to let time do its job. Because justice, when it comes with preparation, arrives like an avalanche. Silent at the beginning, and so devastating at the end. And while their world was still smiling in the varnished post, I was one step away from turning everything upside down. Now, can you imagine what Andrew's reaction was when he found out what I had already done, without telling anyone? Because the phone rang, and his voice was not the same. The phone rang shortly after 3 in the afternoon. I was organizing the clothes in the closet when I heard the insistent sound downstairs. I knew it was Andrew. He had the distressed way in touch, that anxious frequency that only a son can have. I went down slowly. I found him standing in the middle of the room, cell phone still in hand, his eyes wide as if he had seen a ghost. Mom, can you explain to me what's going on? I looked at him with the calm of someone who no longer owes any explanation. I think now it's you who has to explain yourself. Andrew, and I'll. He stammered, now, trying to put the words together. The lawyer, now, had a child. The bank. They said that the accounts were frozen. The real estate. The house. And then he stopped because he understood. He understood that the whole plan had collapsed and that I was the one who overthrew it. Elijah had executed everything as we agreed. The request for reversion was sent based on clear evidence. Emotional coercion, defect of consent, contractual bad faith. The signed documents had legal errors, and most importantly, they were accompanied by recordings that clearly showed the manipulation behind each signature. Andrew and Diana's joint accounts were suspended by court order. The assets, all the properties that were once in my name, were now under guardianship until the court decided definitively. But the truth is that I already knew. Justice had everything it needed to return everything to its place. And deep down, maybe even Andrew knew that. Diana arrived. Minutes later, panicking, he spoke loudly, snorted, called Susan every 3 minutes. The cell phone vibrated non-stop. They can't do that. This house is ours. I have reformed every corner. I watched her from the kitchen, leaning against the counter. I drank my tea calmly as it swirled like a disoriented hurricane. Susan appeared shortly after, made up as always, but her face tense, hard, knee. When she understood the gravity of what had happened, she sat on the couch and was speechless. This old woman, plotted everything behind us," Diana said, in an almost hysterical tone. I approached, now, looked her in the eyes, and replied without raising my voice. It wasn't from behind. It was inside. Each wound you opened was a door that I closed with proof, with record, with silence. It wasn't revenge, Diana. It was justice. She did not answer. For the first time, he was speechless. Andrew lowered his head. His eyes teary. "Why didn't you talk to me before, Mom?" And I just said, "Because you wouldn't have listened." Sometimes love needs to retreat to survive. Now, and in that instant, it was as if he had finally heard. That night, the house fell silent. The phone didn't ring. The lights went out early, and I, for the first time in a long time, slept with the door unlocked and my heart at peace. But there was still one thing to be done, and it wasn't against Diana. It was for me, and maybe by him too. Can you guess what was the only demand I made to my lawyer before closing everything? Because it was in this demand that the game turned completely. Andrew began slamming the bedroom door with a force I hadn't seen since he was a teenager. The same hand that once held mine across the street now trembled uncontrollably, full of fury and confusion. "How could you do this to me, Mom? With us?" His voice echoed through the house. But I didn't move. She was sitting in the same chair where she used to tell him bedtime stories, now renovated by Diana, with new pillows that didn't smell like home. "What?" He cried, screamed. He said that I betrayed him, that I ended his future. No, that I did everything out of revenge. And I was there, motionless, looking at the floor, like someone watching an old movie in which they already know the ending. He was discovering, too late, the weight of his own choices. Diana, on the other hand, walked back and forth with her cell phone in her hand. He called Susan. I talked to lawyers, sent messages that no longer disguised the threatening tone. Does she think she can destroy everything like this? I'm going to end her image. I'll post everything. I'm going to make this story go viral. Who will believe an old woman from the countryside? And then, as in a poorly rehearsed script, she appeared at the door of my room, her eyes hard, her voice low as poison. "Betty, Monsig, Hansario Kal, Im Pregnan, Ovishte Siptana, Ovota, Tapstatius." That didn't take my breath or the ground. I just raised an eyebrow and stared at her. Congratulations. She expected more? No. A reaction. A despair. But I had learned. No. Whoever did not listen to my silence no longer deserved my answer. And I folded my wool blouse again. In the following days, attempts at emotional blackmail came. "Do you want your grandson to grow up without stability? Is that what you're doing?" I heard everything. I recorded everything, and he wrote it down. Elias instructed me to keep everything documented, including the unauthorized access to my room and the attempts to manipulate the narrative. Susan also tried. And Why, he called 3 times in the same day, his voice soft, that didn't match the words. Betty, we are mature women. Aha. We can work this out between us. It doesn't have to involve the court, the press, the lawyer. Why, we are a family now. I hung up without saying anything, because family is not the one who erases your history. It's the one who holds your hand when the world tries to rewrite what you've built. If there's one thing I've learned over all these years, well, it's that the noise of the desperate is usually confusion disguised as truth. But the silence of those who know what they carry, this one, yes, has weight. And for the first time in many years, I was heard, even without opening my mouth. Andrew started coming to my room every day, sometimes in silence, sometimes with red eyes, other times with a sadness that he couldn't disguise. You didn't tell me any of this, Mom. It didn't give me a chance to understand. Oh. And I, again, looked at him with the firmness that only those who bled in silence understand. I gave you all the chances. You just didn't see it. And if you've come this far, listening to all this, there are things that we live and keep. But maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. Like this video and sign up, and let's make this story reach those who need it. Because there are a lot of people living in silence, thinking they don't have the strength to turn the tide. But it does. Oh, and if there is, each night, the house seemed to change its tone. Diana's laughter no longer filled the corridors. Susan's connections have diminished. And Andrew, I sat down at. Well, Andrew started cooking on his own. I washed the dishes. He offered me tea twice, as if he wanted, without knowing how, to rebuild a bridge that he himself burned. But I knew the crossing did not depend only on regret. It depended on justice, and that was yet to come, because the judge had scheduled the hearing, and I knew exactly what I would do when it was my turn to speak. Can you imagine what happens when an invisible woman finally raises her voice in a courtroom? Because that's where everything turned. It was on a gray Sunday afternoon that I asked the two of them to sit with me in the living room, the same room where it had all begun. The curtains were ajar, letting in a low, almost melancholy light. Andrew sat on the corner of the sofa, head down, his shoulders hunched. Diana stepped in with hesitant steps, her arms crossed, trying to hold her pose. There was tension in the air, the kind that we can almost touch with our hands. I got up calmly, went to the sideboard and took the wooden box where I kept my files. I sat down in front of the two of them and placed, one by one, the documents on the table, transcribed recordings, screenshots of messages, copies of the adulterated contracts, evidence of coercion, signed testimonies, and, finally, the most important audio. Diana tried to laugh. This is all a staging. You have nothing against me. I just looked at the tape recorder in my hand. I took a deep breath, and I pressed the button. The room was filled with her voice, clear, arrogant, as only those who believe they will never be unmasked can be. After I get pregnant, he will do everything I want. The house is already ours. So is the money. And when he's emotionally unstable enough, he'll file for divorce. With half of all that, I open the spa and never look back. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Andrew turned pale. His eyes sought mine as if, suddenly, Mom, he had woken up from a years-long trance. Diana was breathless, babbling justifications, trying to erase what was already recorded. That was out of context. It was a joke. I was talking about a movie I saw. I didn't say anything. I just slid one more piece of paper across the table. A white envelope marked with the seal of Elijah's office. Inside, there were two documents: the official request for annulment of the transfer of assets and the notice of immediate eviction of Diana Caldwell. Andrew read it silently. I'll try and only sit out of the all laid shoe. And when he finished, he cried. She cried, like I have never seen since she lost her father. He fell to his knees in front of me, teary-eyed, and his breath choked. Forgive me, Mom, forgive me. I didn't see. No, I didn't know how to protect you. I didn't touch his head, nor did I touch his back. Just said, now you see, and that alone was enough. Diana, between sobs and fury, stood up, shouting that she was going to appeal, that she would sue me, that she would tell everything to the press. And I, with all the serenity in the world, looked her in the eyes and said, tell me now, show everything, but remember that I have more proof than words. She understood. Now, for the first time, she understood that the game was over. Now, there are times in life when we don't need to win by shouting. Just show what we endured in silence. When a woman who has always been silent decides to speak out, it's not out loud. It is with proof, with firmness, with dignity. And it is this kind of victory that no one can touch. If you've been listening to me this far, it's because maybe you've also been underestimated, or how, or made invisible. But I assure you, the story does not end in contempt. Sometimes, what seems like weakness is just time getting ready to do justice. And it is no exaggeration when I say that the most surprising part of this story was yet to come. Because the next day, something happened that even I didn't expect. Do you dare to guess who knocked on my door with an envelope in their hands and teary eyes? The next morning, the gate creaked early. I was already awake, as I always was before everyone else, passing the coffee and listening to the singing of the birds that always came from the same tree in front of the balcony. But that sound was different. It was the wood of the gate, with someone hesitating on the other side. When I opened the door, the ashes, there it was. Diana, a suitcase on wheels, smudged makeup, worn new, a look of defeat, and an envelope in her hands. I didn't say good morning. He didn't even apologize. He only said, I need more time. I stood still. I looked at the suitcase, then at it. You've had too much time. Diana, when you're gone, happen or it cuts. Time to get to know myself. What actually I'll got you. Time to respect this house. Time to choose another way. But he used everything against me. She tried to argue, but even she didn't believe her own words. I knew it was over. Elijah had been clear and unforgiving. The eviction request was approved urgently, 48 hours to leave the house. The judge considered all the elements, including the recordings and evidence of coercion. When she tried to appeal, her lawyer no longer answered. Her name had become a risk in the legal environment. And, as if that were not enough, Elijah had gone further. He filed a lawsuit against Susan for direct involvement in the falsification of clauses and misuse of my image in a partnership agreement with investors in the aesthetics industry. The formal denunciation caused Susan's society to begin to crumble. Commercial partners canceled events. Old customers started to comment on the networks. The Caldwell family's impeccable reputation was now just a trail of dust and cynicism. Diana, when seeing everything fall apart, tried to stay with friends, but it seems that loyalty fades quickly when the ground shakes. One of them refused, claiming too much noise. Another simply did not respond to the messages. And the third, well, the third reposted the Facebook post with a caption, "Lies don't last forever." Andrew, well, on the other hand, did something I never expected. He returned home at the end of that week without an announcement. He carried with him a brown briefcase. "Here are all the documents from the house. Mom, in your name. I don't want any of that. Not now. Not later. I didn't ask for it. I didn't insist. I just received it, because sometimes the greatest request for forgiveness comes in silence, with a gesture that corrects years of blindness." He stood there, now, waiting for me to say something. But I just touched his hand with affection and said, "Now your path begins." Meanwhile, Diana still tried to react as she knew how. By appearance, she posted a video on social media, crying, saying that she had been the victim of a manipulative elderly woman, that she was being unjustly expelled, and that she just wanted to take care of the new family that was to come. But the video had more laughs than support. In the comments, people who had worked with her, former clients, neighbors, all reporting episodes of arrogance, abuse, lies. That polished image, which she had always taken so much care to maintain, was now shattered in the public square. And me? I didn't celebrate. I just watched. Because when the castle is made of vanity and deceit, it only takes a breeze of truth for it to collapse in one piece. Seeing Diana leave with her suitcase, with no one to hug her, without supportive looks, was strange. I didn't feel pleasure. I felt justice. I felt peace. And I needed that, because I spent years being erased, contained, swallowed by the presence of those who never saw me. But at that moment, the invisible became giant. And I knew that The end was near now, but one last thing was missing. A detail that, as small as it seemed, it would change everything once and for all. Because after Diana left, someone came to me, and it wasn't who I expected. You dare to wonder who called me to talk, and what that person had in their hands. On that clear Monday, well, after everything had calmed down, I found myself alone again in that house. But this time, no, there was something different in the air. It was no longer the weight of exclusion or silence that hurts. It was a clean, light silence, almost beautiful. The first thing I did was open all the windows. The sun came in as if it were also waiting for that moment. I took the small ladder from the laundry closet, climbed carefully, and removed the curtains from the living room. I washed it with care, rubbing hard in the folds where the dust hides. No, there are small gestures that say a lot. Wash the curtains, wipe the furniture, prepare coffee calmly. All of this was my way of telling myself, "You're back, Betty Ninbelman. It's still Nerchilti and Talk Tremel. This house is yours. This life is yours." As the smell of coffee wafted through the kitchen, my eyes wandered over the shelf of books. I touched the spine of one of them, the one I read when Andrew was little. Before going to sleep, the memories came like a movie. His feet dangling from the bed, his little hands asking for just one more story. Mom, my heart tightened, but it didn't hurt. It is a longing that reminded me of who I was. And in a way, I still am. But stronger, firmer, down, more whole. I watered my plants on the porch as gently as always. But for the first time in a long time, I paid attention to the beauty of the leaves. The fern, the yam, which had almost died in the months of tension, was now full of shoots, and I saw myself in it, in the silent rebirth. Because the truth is that we, women who have lived a lot, are like these resistant plants. They can even cut off our light. Forget about the water. Push it to the corner. But when we breathe again, we grow stronger. I found myself sitting in the rocking chair that, for a while, wonders why, was taken to the basement. Now she was back on the porch, and me back to my seat. I began to remember everything I swallowed quietly. The subtle jokes, the dismissive looks, the dinners where my presence was ignored. The sweet words with poison behind them. And more than that, the constant feeling of occupying a space that was no longer mine. But the truth is that I never stopped being the owner of my story. They were just trying to make me forget about it. You know, there's something I've learned in this whole journey. Time is the fairest lawyer there is. He doesn't rush. He doesn't scream. He doesn't need a stage. He just observes. And when the time comes, he acts. And the silence. The silence. For a long time, I thought my silence was cowardice, that I should have screamed, banged on the table. They seemed such gentlemen. and on the table, exposed everything before. But today I understand. My silence was my greatest strength, because while they spoke too loudly, I documented it. While they mocked me, while I prepared myself, while they erased me, I kept every memory, every injustice, every detail known. And I know there are a lot of women out there, sitting quietly inside a house that no longer feels like hers, eating on the edges, being treated like weight. But I want to say one thing from the heart. And peace, you are not alone. And its strength is not in the shout. It's calm, Nidyo. It is in firmness. It's in the memory. Because when the right time comes, those who have lived in silence, it surprises the world with the strength that no one has been able to measure. The phone rang that afternoon. It was Andrew. His voice was different, more paused, more humble. Merd dich Marsan. He said he wanted to visit me, that I needed to talk. But this time, here, I didn't say much. I just said, whenever I want, it'll be here. I hung up and looked out the window. The street was quiet. Oh, children playing, neighbors sweeping the sidewalk, life getting back into the rhythm. And I was there, sitting, now, whole, no resentment, no rush, without fear. But you know what's more curious? It was not until the end of that day, as I folded the clean clothes and straightened the bed, that I found an envelope that Elijah had left for me. Inside, Nidalend Monacom, Akshaksi, a letter stable, a paper with something I didn't expect, a letter. And it wasn't the lawyer's. He was the only person who until then had remained absolutely silent in the midst of all this. The question that didn't leave me was, why would she have written to me, Leo? And why now? The letter arrived on a Sunday afternoon, with that gentle wind that moves the curtains and makes the house seem to breathe with us. It was Andrew's. He did not bring flowers, nor empty promises, just simple words, written with humility. He asked for forgiveness. He said that he was in therapy. That he was trying to understand everything that allowed him to happen, and that, if I wanted you, he would like to start over, not as before, but with truth. I read that letter 3 times. The first, I cried, "Nee, oh, child." The second, smiles. The third, I went to the kitchen and prepared my prime rib roast. A week later, he walked through the door with his eyes downcast and his heart open. I brought Fiona, a sweet girl, a teacher who called me Miss Miller and asked if I could teach Andrew the recipe that Andrew talked about so much. The house was alive again, but in a different way. No rush, no illusions, no repetition of mistakes. Because now, I know the love that doesn't respect doesn't come in anymore. And that sofa that one day blacked me out, now it hosts new laughter, light conversation, and the peaceful silence. If I could leave you with a single truth, it would be this. Never think that to be silent is to be weak. Never let them mistake your calmness for surrender. Sometimes it is in silence that we prepare, that we observe now, and that we win, not with shouting, not with scandals, but with the elegance of someone who knows exactly who he is. Every woman who has ever been left aside, forgotten, exchanged for an appearance. You need to remember this. Old age is not the end of the road. Why, yeah, it's the moment when the road aligns with who you've truly become. I didn't scream, but I was heard. I didn't slam doors, but I was respected. And if everything I've lived can serve you on the other side, so this story was worth it. Calm. Thank you for following me here. Really, her listening was like a silent companion in this walk of memories. And if this video touched your heart, leave a like for me. It's like a tight hug that warms up at the end of the day. If you want to come back here for another conversation, another coffee, now, subscribes to the channel. It's our way of keeping the door open. And tell me where you're watching from. I love imagining every heart that has heard this story, whether it's from a small town or a big capital. And it activates the bell, too. So you don't lose it when the coffee's ironed again. And I have another story to share with you. Don't go away yet. No. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.